What would make a seasoned psychiatrist with 15 years of experience question everything they thought they understood about the human mind? In today's story, you'll meet Dr. Sarah Chen and discover the case that fundamentally changed her approach to psychiatric practice, a case involving a patient whose condition defied every textbook, every theory, and every conventional understanding of mental health. But before we begin, subscribe to the channel to help us reach our goal. Leave a like and comment below sharing your thoughts on unusual psychological phenomena. Now, settle in and listen carefully to what unfolds, because this story will of human consciousness. There are moments challenge everything you think you know about the boundaries in a psychiatrist's career when they encounter something that cannot be explained by years of medical training, decades of clinical experience, or volumes of psychiatric literature. I have carried such a moment with me for 2 years now, and only today, as I sit in my private practice office reviewing case files, have I found the courage to share these events with anyone outside my immediate professional circle. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I am a licensed psychiatrist with 15 years of experience treating patients with severe mental health conditions. I completed my residency at Johns Hopkins Hospital and have worked extensively with cases involving dissociative disorders, severe depression, schizophrenia, and complex trauma responses. Throughout my career, I have always prided myself on my methodical approach to diagnosis, my adherence to evidence-based treatment protocols, and my ability to help even the most challenging patients find pathways to recovery. I thought I had seen every possible manifestation of mental illness, every variation of psychological distress, every form that human suffering could take when filtered through the complexities of the mind. I was wrong. The case I'm about to describe took place during my tenure as the chief psychiatrist at Riverside Psychiatric Hospital, a 200-bed facility located in the suburbs of Chicago that specializes in treating patients with acute psychiatric conditions requiring intensive inpatient care. Riverside Psychiatric Hospital was built in 1967 and has earned a reputation as one of the most comprehensive psychiatric treatment centers in the Midwest. The facility consists of 6 specialized units, each designed to address different types of mental health conditions. As chief psychiatrist, I oversaw treatment protocols for the most complex cases, supervised a team of 8 psychiatrists, and worked directly with patients whose conditions required the highest level of clinical expertise. The patient who would change everything arrived at Riverside on a cold Tuesday morning in October 2022. His name was Marcus Reeves, a 34-year-old software engineer from downtown Chicago, who had been brought to our emergency psychiatric unit by his concerned roommate after exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior over the previous 3 weeks. Marcus presented as an articulate, well-educated professional with no previous history of psychiatric treatment, no family history of mental illness, and no documented substance abuse issues. According to his roommate, David Kim, Marcus had been functioning normally until approximately 3 weeks prior to admission, when he began experiencing what he described as vivid dreams that felt more real than waking life. David reported that Marcus had started talking about these dreams during their morning coffee conversations, initially describing them as unusually detailed and emotionally intense. But over the course of 2 weeks, Marcus became increasingly preoccupied with these dream experiences, spending hours each day writing detailed accounts of what he claimed to have experienced during sleep. What concerned David most was Marcus's growing insistence that these weren't dreams at all, but rather experiences in what he called alternate realities that he was somehow accessing during sleep. Marcus claimed that in these alternate realities, he was living completely different lives, with different careers, different relationships, and different personal histories. The situation escalated when Marcus began staying awake for days at a time, afraid to sleep because he said he was becoming confused about which reality was real. David found Marcus on the morning of admission sitting at his computer, surrounded by hundreds of pages of handwritten notes, claiming that he had discovered a way to control his transitions between realities, but was afraid he might get lost and never return to what he called his primary existence. When the paramedics arrived, Marcus was coherent and cooperative, but insisted on bringing his extensive notes with him to the hospital. He explained to the emergency medical team that these notes were crucial evidence of his experiences, and that any psychiatrist who wanted to help him would need to review them carefully. Marcus was admitted to our acute care unit under my direct supervision. During our initial interview, I found him to be remarkably articulate and logical in his presentation, despite the unusual nature of his reported experiences. He showed no signs of the disorganized thinking typically associated with psychotic disorders, no evidence of hallucinations or delusions in the traditional sense, and no indication of mood disturbances that might explain his condition. "Dr. Chen, I understand how this must sound," Marcus said during our first session, "but I need you to understand that I'm not experiencing hallucinations or delusions. I'm fully aware of how unusual my situation is, and I've spent considerable time trying to find rational explanations for what's happening to me." Marcus went on to explain that his experiences began approximately 1 month prior to admission, coinciding with a period of intense work stress when he had been putting in 16-hour days to complete a critical software development project. He initially attributed his vivid dreams to exhaustion and stress, but became concerned when the dreams began to exhibit a level of consistency and detail that seemed impossible. "In one of these alternate realities, I'm a marine biologist working at a research station in Antarctica," Marcus explained. "I can describe in perfect detail the layout of the research facility, the names and backgrounds of my colleagues, the specific research projects we're working on, and even technical details about marine ecosystems that I have no knowledge of in my waking life." To test his claims, I asked Marcus to describe some of the technical marine biology concepts he claimed to know from his alternate reality experiences. His responses demonstrated knowledge that would typically require years of specialized education and training, including detailed understanding of deep-sea pressure adaptations, Antarctic food chain dynamics, and advanced research methodologies used in polar marine biology. Marcus had brought with him over 400 pages of handwritten notes documenting his experiences across what he claimed were 17 different alternate realities. Each set of notes was meticulously organized, with detailed descriptions of the physical environments, social relationships, and daily activities he experienced in each reality. As I reviewed these notes over the following days, I was struck by their internal consistency and the level of detail Marcus had recorded. Each alternate reality was fully developed with complex backstories, realistic social dynamics, and technical knowledge that seemed far beyond Marcus's educational background or professional experience. In one reality, Marcus documented experiences as a classical musician performing with the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, including detailed descriptions of rehearsal schedules, performance venues, and advanced music theory concepts. In another, he recorded experiences as a pediatric surgeon at a children's hospital in Boston, with accurate medical terminology and surgical procedures that would typically require years of medical training to understand. What made Marcus's case even more unusual was his insistence that time passed differently in each alternate reality. He claimed that during a single night's sleep, he might experience several days or even weeks in an alternate reality, complete with full memories of continuous experiences during that time period. "Dr. Chen, I know this challenges everything you've been trained to believe about consciousness and sleep," Marcus said during our third session. "But I'm living full, complete lives in these other realities. I have relationships, responsibilities, and experiences that are just as real and meaningful as anything in this reality." Marcus also reported that he was beginning to retain skills and knowledge from his alternate reality experiences. The marine biology knowledge he had demonstrated was just one example of what he described as cross-reality learning, where information and abilities acquired in alternate realities became accessible in his primary consciousness. To verify his claims about cross-reality skill acquisition, I decided to conduct a series of cognitive assessments that would test knowledge areas Marcus claimed to have gained from his alternate reality experiences. The results were deeply unsettling and challenged my understanding of how human memory and learning function. I began with musical aptitude tests, since Marcus claimed to be a professional violinist in one of his alternate realities. Despite having no formal musical training in his primary life, Marcus demonstrated perfect pitch, advanced sight-reading abilities, and theoretical knowledge that typically requires years of intensive study. When I arranged for him to be evaluated by Dr. Patriciad, former conservatory instructor, she was astonished by his capabilities. Morrison, our hospital's music therapist, and Dr. Chen, this patient displays musical knowledge and intuitive understanding that I've only seen in musicians who have dedicated their entire lives to their craft, Dr. Morrison reported after her evaluation. He correctly identified complex chord progressions, demonstrated advanced fingering techniques for violin, and discussed performance interpretations with the sophistication of a seasoned professional. Even more disturbing was Marcus's medical knowledge from what he claimed was his alternate reality as a pediatric surgeon. During our sessions, he would casually reference surgical procedures, anatomical structures, and treatment protocols with startling accuracy. I consulted with Dr. Robert Hayes from our hospital's medical staff, who confirmed that Marcus's medical knowledge was consistent with advanced surgical training. The terminology he uses, the way he describes surgical approaches, even his understanding of post-operative complications, it's all accurate and sophisticated, Dr. Hayes told me. But according to his records, he's never had any medical education or healthcare experience. As Marcus's stay at Riverside extended into its second week, his condition became more complex rather than improving. He began reporting that his alternate reality experiences were becoming more intense and that he was starting to have difficulty distinguishing which reality was his primary existence. Dr. Chen, I'm losing track of which life is supposed to be real, Marcus confided during our 8th session. Yesterday, I spent what felt like 3 weeks working on a research project in Antarctica, and when I woke up here, it took me several minutes to remember that I'm supposed to be a software engineer in Chicago. Marcus's confusion about his identity began affecting his behavior on the unit. Nurses reported that he would sometimes introduce himself to staff members using names and professional titles from his alternate realities. On one occasion, he spent an entire afternoon trying to access what he believed was his laboratory at the research station, becoming agitated when staff explained that he was in a psychiatric hospital. What concerned me most was that Marcus's alternate reality experiences seemed to be accelerating and becoming more frequent. Instead of occurring only during sleep, he began reporting brief episodes during waking hours where he would suddenly find himself experiencing moments from his other lives. It's like channels changing on a television, Marcus explained. One moment I'm sitting here talking with you, and the next moment I'm in the middle of a surgical procedure, completely present and aware in that environment, and then suddenly I'm back here. These episodes, which Marcus called reality shifts, began occurring multiple times per day and seemed to be triggered by specific environmental cues. The sound of classical music would transport him to his reality as a violinist. Medical equipment would trigger his surgeon identity. Even the smell of coffee could shift him into what he described as his reality as a coffee plantation owner in Colombia. I consulted with colleagues across the country, searching for similar cases or any research that might explain Marcus's condition. Dr. Amanda Foster at Harvard Medical School suggested that Marcus might be experiencing a rare form of dissociative identity disorder, but his presentation didn't match typical DID criteria. His alternate identities weren't separate personalities, but rather what appeared to be complete alternate lives with continuous memories and experiences. Dr. Michael Chen at Stanford, no relation despite the shared surname, proposed that Marcus might be suffering from a complex sleep disorder combined with false memory syndrome. But this explanation couldn't account for the verifiable knowledge and skills Marcus had acquired, particularly in highly specialized fields like marine biology and surgical medicine. The most disturbing development occurred during Marcus's third week at Riverside, when he began reporting that people from his alternate realities were starting to remember him. He claimed that his colleagues in Antarctica had begun asking him about extended absences that corresponded to time he spent conscious in his primary reality. Dr. Chen, this morning I woke up in the research station and my supervisor asked me where I've been for the past 3 weeks, Marcus said, his voice filled with genuine distress. She said, I've been disappearing from work, missing meetings, and not responding to communications. But from my perspective, I've been here in the hospital for 3 weeks. Marcus went on to explain that similar situations were occurring in several of his alternate realities. His conductor in Vienna was concerned about his erratic attendance at rehearsals. His patients at the Children's Hospital were asking why their surgeon had been unavailable for scheduled procedures. The boundaries between realities are breaking down, Marcus continued. It's not just me moving between different lives anymore. The lives are starting to affect each other, and people in those realities are becoming aware that something unusual is happening. This development forced me to consider possibilities that challenged my entire framework for understanding consciousness and mental health. If Marcus was somehow actually experiencing alternate realities rather than elaborate delusions, then his case represented something far beyond the scope of conventional psychiatric treatment. I decided to conduct an experiment that would either confirm Marcus's claims or provide evidence that his experiences were psychological rather than metaphysical in nature. Working with our hospital's sleep study unit, I arranged for Marcus to undergo comprehensive monitoring during his sleep cycles, including EEG brain activity measurements, eye movement tracking, and continuous video observation. The results of Marcus's sleep study would fundamentally change my understanding of what might be possible regarding human consciousness, and would force me to confront questions about the nature of reality itself that I had never imagined I would face as a practicing psychiatrist. The sleep study was conducted over 3 consecutive nights in our hospital's specialized sleep laboratory. Marcus was connected to 24 different monitoring devices that would track every aspect of his physiological state during sleep cycles. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, our sleep specialist, had worked with thousands of patients over her career, but she agreed to personally oversee Marcus's study due to the unusual nature of his case. On the first night of monitoring, Marcus's sleep patterns appeared relatively normal during the initial stages. His brain activity showed typical transitions through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM cycles. But approximately 3 hours into his sleep, something unprecedented occurred that left Dr. Walsh and her technician staff completely baffled. Marcus's EEG readings suddenly began displaying patterns that Dr. Walsh had never seen in 15 years of sleep research. Instead of the characteristic brainwave patterns associated with REM sleep, Marcus's brain activity showed simultaneous firing across multiple regions that typically don't activate together during normal sleep cycles. Dr. Chen, I need you to see this immediately. Dr. Walsh called me at 2:30 in the morning. Marcus's brain activity is showing patterns that shouldn't be physiologically possible. He's displaying conscious-level neural activity while remaining in deep sleep states. When I arrived at the sleep laboratory, Marcus appeared to be sleeping peacefully, but the monitoring equipment was recording brain activity that resembled a person who was wide awake and engaged in complex cognitive tasks. More disturbing was the fact that his brain was showing activation in areas associated with specialized knowledge that Marcus shouldn't possess. Look at this section here. Dr. Walsh pointed to specific readings on the EEG monitor. This pattern of neural firing is consistent with someone performing advanced mathematical calculations. But watch what happens next. The brain activity suddenly shifted to patterns typically associated with musical performance, then to areas linked with surgical procedures and medical decision-making. Marcus's brain was cycling through different types of specialized cognitive activity every 20 to 30 minutes throughout the night, as if he was actively engaged in the various professional activities he claimed to experience in his alternate realities. The monitoring continued for 6 hours, during which Marcus's brain displayed expertise-level neural patterns in marine biology, classical music, surgical medicine, agricultural science, and several other specialized fields. When Marcus woke the following morning, he provided detailed reports of his experiences during the night that corresponded exactly to the specialized brain activity we had recorded. During the period when his EEG showed mathematical processing patterns, Marcus reported working on complex engineering calculations at a research facility. When his brain displayed musical performance activity, he described participating in a violin concerto performance in Vienna. "Dr. Chen, I can still feel the weight of the violin in my hands," Marcus said during our session following the first night of monitoring. "I can remember every note of the Mozart concerto we performed, the acoustics of the concert hall, even the nervous energy I felt before walking on stage." The second night of monitoring produced even more disturbing results. Marcus's brain activity began showing patterns that Dr. Walsh described as impossible, according to current understanding of neuroscience. His neural firing displayed simultaneous activation across regions that should be mutually exclusive during sleep, suggesting that his consciousness was somehow operating in multiple states at once. "Dr. Chen, it's as if Marcus's brain is accessing different neural networks simultaneously," Dr. Walsh explained as we reviewed the second night's data. "The patterns suggest that he's not just dreaming about these experiences, but actually engaging in multiple types of complex cognitive activity at the same time." During the second night, Marcus reported experiencing what he described as overlapping realities, where he was conscious in 3 different alternate lives simultaneously. He described performing surgery while also conducting marine research and participating in a business meeting, all occurring in parallel rather than in sequence. "It was like having multiple monitors running different programs at the same time," Marcus explained. "I was fully present and capable in each situation, but I was aware of all 3 experiences happening simultaneously." The third night of monitoring produced results that forced Dr. Walsh to question fundamental assumptions about consciousness and sleep. Marcus's brain began displaying neural activity patterns that extended beyond anything in medical literature. His EEG reading showed activation in brain regions that typically remain dormant during sleep, combined with synchronization between different neural networks that shouldn't be possible. "Dr. Chen, I'm going to be honest with you," Dr. Walsh said as we reviewed the final night's data. "These results challenge everything I understand about how the human brain functions during sleep. Marcus's neural activity suggests levels of consciousness and cognitive capability that exceed normal waking state brain function. Most disturbing was the discovery that Marcus's brain was showing activity in regions associated with accessing long-term memories that he shouldn't possess. The hippocampus and associated memory centers were firing in patterns consistent with retrieving decades of stored experiences, despite Marcus being only 34 years old. The implications of the sleep study results forced me to confront possibilities I had never considered as a psychiatric professional. Either Marcus was experiencing a form of consciousness expansion that science didn't yet understand, or he was somehow actually accessing alternate versions of his life in ways that transcended conventional reality. I decided to conduct one final test that would either confirm or disprove Marcus's claims about his alternate reality experiences. Working with colleagues at the University of Chicago, I arranged for Marcus to undergo evaluation by experts in fields where he claimed to have knowledge from his alternate realities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a marine biologist from the university's Oceanographic Research Department, spent 4 hours testing Marcus's knowledge of deep-sea ecosystems and Antarctic marine life. Her evaluation report was deeply troubling and challenged my remaining skepticism about Marcus's condition. Mr. Reeves demonstrated knowledge of Antarctic marine biology that equals or exceeds that of researchers with decades of field experience, Dr. Rodriguez wrote in her evaluation. He provided detailed descriptions of species behaviors, ecosystem interactions, and research methodologies that are known only to specialists who have spent years working in polar marine environments. Dr. Rodriguez went on to note that Marcus had described research techniques and equipment configurations that were used at specific Antarctic research stations, information that would only be known to scientists who had actually worked at those facilities. When she contacted colleagues at the research stations Marcus had described, they confirmed that his descriptions were accurate, down to minute details about daily operations and personnel. The musical evaluation conducted by Professor David Kim from the university's Music Conservatory produced equally disturbing results. Marcus demonstrated technical proficiency and interpretive understanding that Professor Kim described as equivalent to conservatory-trained professionals with years of performance experience. Mr. Reeves performed complex violin pieces with technical precision and artistic interpretation that would typically require a lifetime of dedicated study, Professor Kim reported. His understanding of musical theory, performance technique, and interpretive nuance suggests training and experience that his background doesn't support. Most unsettling was Marcus's ability to discuss specific performances, venues, and musical colleagues that he claimed to remember from his alternate reality as a professional violinist. Professor Kim verified several of these references through contacts in the international classical music community, finding that Marcus had described actual performances, venues, and professional musicians with remarkable accuracy. The medical knowledge evaluation conducted by Dr. Sarah Martinez, Chief of Pediatric Surgery at the University Hospital, produced results that forced me to seriously consider that Marcus might be experiencing something beyond conventional psychiatric illness. Mr. Reeves demonstrated knowledge of pediatric surgical procedures that would typically require years of medical school, residency training, and specialized fellowship experience, Dr. Martinez reported. He correctly described complex surgical approaches, anatomical considerations, and post-operative care protocols that are known only to practicing pediatric surgeons. Dr. Martinez noted that Marcus had provided detailed descriptions of specific surgical cases, including rare conditions and innovative treatment approaches that matched procedures documented in medical literature. His knowledge extended to nuanced understanding of surgical decision-making, patient care considerations, and medical ethics that would typically develop only through extensive clinical experience. The combined results of these evaluations forced me to confront a possibility that challenged my entire professional worldview. Marcus appeared to possess genuine expertise in multiple specialized fields that he could not have acquired through conventional learning in his 34 years of life. If his alternate reality experiences were psychological delusions, how could they have provided him with verifiable knowledge and skills that matched those of trained professionals? As Marcus entered his 4th week at Riverside Psychiatric Hospital, his condition continued to evolve in ways that defied every treatment protocol I had ever learned. His reality shifts were becoming more frequent and unpredictable, occurring multiple times per hour and lasting for varying durations that seemed to correspond to activities in his alternate realities. During our daily sessions, Marcus would sometimes suddenly pause mid-sentence, his eyes taking on a distant expression as he appeared to engage with experiences occurring in other realities. These episodes could last anywhere from a few minutes to over an hour, during which Marcus remained physically present, but seemed to be fully engaged in activities elsewhere. "Dr. Chen, the boundaries are completely breaking down," Marcus told me during a rare moment of singular consciousness. "I'm losing the ability to maintain focus in any single reality. It's becoming increasingly difficult to determine which experiences are happening where, and I'm starting to lose track of which version of my life is supposed to be primary." The situation reached a critical point when Marcus began reporting that his actions in alternate realities were having consequences that he couldn't control or predict. He described making medical decisions as a surgeon that affected patients he would never meet in his primary reality, conducting research as a marine biologist that could impact environmental policy decisions, and performing musical concerts that influenced the careers of fellow musicians he had never encountered in his Chicago life. "The responsibility is becoming overwhelming," Marcus explained, his voice filled with genuine distress. "I'm living multiple complete lives simultaneously, and every decision I make in each reality affects other people in ways I can't fully comprehend or control." The ethical implications of Marcus's condition began weighing heavily on my mind as I observed his deteriorating ability to maintain coherent consciousness in any single reality. As his attending psychiatrist, I had a responsibility to help him, but I was facing a situation that existed far beyond the boundaries of conventional medical practice. I consulted with the hospital's ethics committee, but explaining Marcus's case proved nearly impossible. How could I describe a patient whose consciousness appeared to be genuinely experiencing multiple simultaneous lives when such a condition had no precedent in psychiatric literature? The committee members listened politely to my presentation, but I could see the skepticism in their faces as I described Marcus's verifiable knowledge acquisition and the sleep study results. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the committee chair, suggested that I might be experiencing countertransference with Marcus, becoming too emotionally invested in his case to maintain clinical objectivity. She recommended that I consider transferring his care to another psychiatrist who could approach his treatment with fresh perspective. But I couldn't abandon Marcus when he was clearly experiencing something unprecedented that required someone willing to think beyond conventional psychiatric frameworks. Instead, I decided to document everything meticulously, creating a comprehensive record that might help future researchers understand what we were witnessing. Marcus's physical health began to deteriorate as his reality shifts became more frequent and intense. He lost significant weight because his eating patterns were disrupted by his shifting consciousness. In his marine biology reality, he might eat breakfast at the Antarctic Research Station, then shift to his surgeon reality where it was evening, and he had already completed a full day of medical procedures without eating. His sleep cycles became completely erratic as his brain struggled to process the temporal inconsistencies between his different realities. Sometimes he would experience several weeks of time in an alternate reality during what should have been a single night's sleep, leaving him mentally and physically exhausted when he returned to primary consciousness. "Dr. Chen, I'm aging differently in each reality," Marcus told me during what would become one of our final coherent conversations. "In some realities, months or even years have passed while only weeks have gone by here. I'm starting to feel the cumulative fatigue of living multiple lifetimes simultaneously." The nursing staff reported increasingly unusual behavior as Marcus's condition progressed. He would sometimes speak in languages that weren't documented in his background, apparently conversing with colleagues from his alternate realities. On several occasions, he demonstrated physical skills that he shouldn't possess, including advanced surgical hand techniques and musical finger positions that required years of training to develop. Most disturbing was Marcus's growing insistence that people from his alternate realities were beginning to question the nature of their own existence. He reported that his colleagues in various realities had started experiencing their own reality shifts, becoming aware that they might be living alternate versions of their lives. Dr. Chen, "I think I'm causing some kind of cascade effect," Marcus said, his voice filled with panic. "My surgeon colleague, Dr. Williams, told me yesterday that she's been having dreams about being a marine biologist in Antarctica. My research partner in Antarctica mentioned having vivid dreams about performing surgery on children. I think my condition is somehow spreading to people I interact with in my alternate realities." This development forced me to consider possibilities that extended far beyond individual psychiatric treatment. If Marcus's reality shifts were somehow affecting other people, then we were potentially dealing with a phenomenon that could have implications reaching far beyond our hospital walls. I attempted to verify Marcus's claims about reality shifting affecting others by contacting research facilities and hospitals he had mentioned. Most institutions wouldn't provide information about their personnel, but I was able to speak with one administrator at a marine research station who confirmed that several staff members had recently reported unusually vivid dreams about completely different careers and lives. We've had 3 researchers independently report dreams about being doctors, musicians, and other professionals, the administrator told me. It's probably just coincidence, but the dreams have been so detailed and consistent that some of our staff have been discussing them during break times. The implications were staggering. If Marcus's consciousness was somehow creating connections between alternate versions of reality, and if these connections were beginning to affect other people, then we were witnessing something that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness and reality itself. I reached out to theoretical physicists and consciousness researchers at universities across the country, hoping to find someone who might have frameworks for understanding what we were observing. Dr. James Morrison at MIT's Consciousness Research Lab agreed to review Marcus's case files and the sleep study data. Dr. Chen, what you're describing aligns with certain theoretical models of consciousness that suggest awareness might not be entirely localized to individual brains, Dr. Morrison explained during our phone consultation. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness might involve access to information fields that exist independently of physical neural structures. Marcus disappeared from Riverside Psychiatric Hospital on November 15, 2022. Security cameras showed him walking calmly out of his room at 3:17 a.m., but no footage captured him leaving the building. His bed was found neatly made with a handwritten note that simply read, "I've found the way home. All of them." I submitted my resignation the following week. After 15 years of psychiatric practice, I could no longer trust my understanding of human consciousness or mental health. The case files I've shared with you today represent everything I documented about Marcus Reeves, but they raise more questions than they answer. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus found peace in whatever reality he chose as his permanent home. Other times I fear that he became lost between worlds, forever shifting between lives that were equally real and equally impossible. But what haunts me most is the possibility that consciousness is far more mysterious and interconnected than any of us realize. I've established a private practice now, focusing on patients with conventional psychiatric conditions. But I keep Marcus's files in a locked drawer of my desk, and sometimes late at night I find myself reviewing them, searching for answers to questions I'm not sure I'm ready to understand. If you've experienced anything similar to what Marcus described, or if you know someone who has, please reach out. The boundaries between realities might be more permeable than we think, and there may be others who need help navigating worlds that exist beyond our current understanding of what's possible. The human mind remains the greatest mystery we face, and Marcus Reeves taught me that everything we think we know about consciousness might be just the beginning.